History of the Lord Buddha. Amidst the endless cycle of existence known as samsara, its beginning and end can no longer be discerned. A living being has to die and be reborn countless lifetimes before he can understand the truth of life in the world, feel dissatisfied with the way things are, and be motivated to find a way to liberate himself from all the suffering. The Buddha revealed to the world the truth behind life in the current and the future worlds. He was the first person to discover the law of karma, the universal law that governs all living beings in the endless cycle of existence known as samsara. He showed us the way to end all sufferings, close the gates to hell, and the path to heaven and nibbana regardless of one's station in life or social class. With boundless compassion, the Buddha is considered the greatest teacher by all humans and celestial beings. Although incalculable numbers of Buddhas have come into the world, but the occurrence of each Buddha doesn't happen easily and takes an unimaginably long time. This will be illustrated in the story of Siddhartha Gautama of the Shakyamuni clan who became Gautama Buddha. Siddhartha's story begins in the lifetime when he declared his aspiration to earnestly pursue the perfections and become the Buddha. In that lifetime, he was a poor young man who sacrificed his life to save his mother by swimming across the ocean while carrying her on his back after their ship capsized. They drifted in the rough seas for 7 days as he swam with his mother on his shoulders. This tragic event forced him to contemplate about the suffering that all living beings must undergo and triggered a great desire to get out of this suffering. He then made an earnest resolution to be liberated from the cycle of existence. If I gain enlightenment, I would let others do so as well. If I could escape, I would let others do so as well. If I could cross over, I would let others do so as well. From that day forward, the Bodhisattva persevered in cultivating the 10 perfections, consisting of generosity, morality, renunciation, wisdom, endeavor, patience, truthfulness, resolution, loving-kindness, and equanimity. Starting from the primary level of perfections, donating his blood, flesh, and organ, and loved things and loved ones, he eventually elevated himself to the supreme perfections, sacrificing his own life. He continued to accumulate good deeds and cultivated his perfections for 20 incalculable eons and 100,000 world cycles. Before his final lifetime, in which he became the Buddha, he was a celestial king by the name of King Santucitta, who ruled Tucitta heaven. During that time, Devas from the 10,000 world system convened to discuss who would become the next enlightened Buddha. They all agreed that it should be King Santucitta and invited him to take birth as a human being. He accepted their request and entered the womb of Queen Mahamaya, the wife of King Suttodana, ruler of Kapilavastu. When Queen Mahamaya was 10 months pregnant, she made a trip back to her home in Devadaha city with the intention of giving birth in the land of her father, which was a tradition of that time. Along the way, she stopped at Lumpini Grove to take a needed rest underneath the beautiful blooming sala trees. As she reached for a branch of a sala tree, it bent itself down to meet her hand. While holding onto the branch for support, the queen gave birth to the great Bodhisattva. When the great Bodhisattva was delivered, his body was immaculate as there was no stain or dirt associated with birth. He also possessed the 32 marks of a great man due to the perfections he had cultivated. This was the final birth of the great man who will attain enlightenment and become the Buddha due to the perfected virtues that were accumulated to the fullest extent. He took 7 steps and proclaimed, I am the supreme being in the world. I am the most sublime. This is my final birth. There shall be no further rebirth for me. At that time, a hermit, Asita, also known as Kela Devin, who was acquainted with the royal family, heard about the great Bodhisattva's birth and requested a visit to the royal palace. As soon as he saw the marks of the great man on the prince, he paid homage at the prince's feet. Then, he predicted that this little prince would definitely attain enlightenment and become the Buddha. Kodonyat Brahmin also anticipated that Prince Siddhartha, whose name meant the one who would bring fulfillment to humanity, would definitely be ordained and become the Buddha. "7 days after giving birth, Queen Mahamaya passed away. So King Suddhodana placed Siddhartha under the care of Mahaprajapati, the prince's aunt. King Suddhodana was so determined to have his son become a supreme monarch and not an ascetic that he took every measure to prevent the prince from ever thinking of becoming an ascetic. The king indulged the prince in all sorts of worldly happiness. When the prince was 16 years old, he graduated from the famous school of Guru Vitsvamitra. His father had magnificent seasonal palaces built for him, one for the winter, one for the summer, and a third for the rainy season. In all palaces, only appealing women were present. King Suddhodana subsequently ceded the throne to Prince Siddhartha and arranged his marriage to Princess Yasodhara from the city of Devadaha. Princess Yasodhara was exceptionally elegant and possessed all 5 attributes of feminine charm. They had up to 40,000 maid servants to pander to them. He was given a life of perfect luxury for 29 years and was provided infinite care to be spared from the sight of anything that might distress him or experience suffering that ordinary people encountered. His life was deliberately surrounded with sense pleasure because his father had no desire to see him take up the religious life. Then one day, he had a desire to travel outside the palace. Seizing that chance, celestial beings took the opportunity to show him the truth of the world and thus transformed themselves into the 4 great sights. What he encountered were an old man, a sick man, and a corpse. The sights saddened him due to the uncertainty of life, since nobody can go beyond aging, sickness, and death, including himself. But once he saw the 4th great sign, a serene ascetic, Siddhartha became delighted and longed to search for the way out of suffering. When he saw the 3 sights, he first felt melancholic because throughout his 29 years, he had never contemplated these matters. He realized the uncertainty of life and the fact that all beings, including him, wished to escape aging, sickness, and death. Later, when he saw the 4th sign, who was a calm and composed ascetic, he aspired to ordain and become one as well. One day, after he heard that his queen Yasodhara had just given birth to a little prince, the Buddha said, "A Rahu is born, a feather has arisen." On that very same evening, he woke up in the middle of the night and saw the ghastly sight of the ladies in waiting, looking like corpses in a cemetery as they lay sleeping, and a feeling of discontent arose in his heart. He decided to abandon his amassed wealth that reflected his fortune, status, and honor, the prestige that most people yearned for. He even forewent the great fortune that was promised to come to him in 7 days. He was willing to relinquish everything because he had a higher goal, to seek enlightenment and to find the way out of suffering from the endless cycle of rebirth. He sacrificed everything in order to enter the ascetic life, to search the truth, whose value was superior to the reign of a universal monarch. He recognized that although the status of a universal monarch may be superior, it still could not escape the suffering derived from aging, sickness, and death. Therefore, he went forth on his steed, Gantaka, along with his favorite page, Chana, to embark the life of an ascetic and to find the way out of suffering. After ordaining, the Bodhisattva studied diligently under the ashram of hermits Alara and Uttaka until he was able to attain the 8th attainment. Although his knowledge exceeded that of his teachers, he was still unable to find the way out of suffering. He then realized that this was not the correct way to escape the cycle of suffering. So he set off on his own to find the path out of suffering and proceeded to Uruvela, where the 5 ascetics waited upon him while he practiced extreme self-mortification. After 6 years of rigorous practice, he exceeded everyone, but still could not find the path to emancipation or enlightenment. Once he realized that self-mortification only led to suffering, and not the end to suffering, he ceased the practice completely and turned to meditation. On the 15th day of the 6th lunar month, the day Siddhartha attained enlightenment, Miss Suchada kindly offered him rice pudding. After finishing his meal, the Bodhisattva brought the golden platter to Naranjara river and made an earnest resolve. If I am able to attain enlightenment today, may this platter float upstream against the current. As it so happened, the platter floated upstream to the middle of the river, about 80 cubits, before sinking to the subterranean world of the Nagas. After that, he went to a Bodhi tree and received 8 bunches of dried grass from Sotiya and made a seat for himself at the base of the Bodhi tree. Suddenly his seat became a precious throne, 14 cubits in width, and he sat in the half-lotus position. He sat facing east and made a declaration. Even if my flesh and blood were to dry up, leaving only my skin and bones, I will not leave this seat until I attain enlightenment. While the great man was meditating, evil Mara tried to thwart his effort, contemplating, Siddhartha is about to set free from my control. I shall not allow this to happen. The evil Mara then advanced his Mara troops to besiege the great man with the intention of destroying his persistence. The sound made by Mara and his troop sounded like the earth was collapsing. The evil Mara was riding on his elephant, Kilimekra, that possessed 1,000 arms, holding a myriad of weapons. The Mara troop advanced toward the Bodhisattva with numerous types of weapons that varied in strength. All the celestial beings were so terrified that they escaped to the end of the universe, leaving the great man alone on his throne to defend for himself. He then thought to himself, "These evil Mara aim to attack me and only me. I do not have anyone here except for the perfected virtues that I have accumulated for an incalculable amount of time. I shall use my perfections to fight against this evil Mara troop." Upon recalling the 3 levels of the 10 perfections, which he pursued to the fullest extent, he felt no fear for the evil Mara and its troop. Even after demonstrating its mighty power, the evil Mara and its troop was not able to deter the great man. The evil Mara and its troop eventually retreated after they could not match the great man's perfections. Following his victory, he sat still and meditated earnestly by concentrating his mind at the center of his body. When his mind came to a standstill, a clear and bright crystal sphere appeared inside. His mind drifted inwards in accordance to the middle way, not too tight and not too loose. As he meditated, his mind became increasingly clear, and the Dhammagaya eventually appeared. The more still his mind became, the greater the bliss he experienced. During the first watch, he acquired the ability to remember his incalculable numbers of past existences in the endless cycle of existence. During the second watch, he he attained the super knowledge where he could recall other beings' previous existences. During the third watch, he attained knowledge of the Four Noble Truths and could eliminate all the defilements from his mind. Our Bodhisattva continued to contemplate his enlightened knowledge until he became enlightened as the Buddha early the following morning. He had finally liberated himself from the sense sphere that imprisoned every living being after countless existences dedicated to discovering the path out of suffering.